cataract thrombolysis, and we have two other names, local or interthrombus thrombolysis. And maybe the last name is the best one because it's telling us directly what we are doing, namely installating lytic therapy fluid directly in the thrombus delivered by a catheter. So that's a more proper word actually. The most important issue for thrombolysis is to restore the outflow tract, meaning the iliofemoral segment. And that corresponds very, very well to the definition of an iliofemoral deep venous thrombosis, which goes from the IVC to the profunda vein. So in this case, we have an iliofemoral DVT extending to the IVC, and below DVT descending to the knee joint. But still, it is an iliofemoral deep venous thrombosis with extension in both directions. And in the papers are a lot of confusing, actually, when we are talking about iliofemoral DVTs, but this is the definition, and be careful when you are reading the papers. Most of us are puncturing in the knee joint, not in the knee joint, but popliteal vein. That's the easiest way. Some are puncturing at the foot in the tibial vein. That's more difficult. And remember, we have 6 crural vessels, and we are only maybe puncturing 1 at the foot. So there are some problems when we have crural involvement, like in this case. But we have also cases with cava atresia to treat, and this is not a problem. I will come back to that. I have listed here the most important papers in my mind back with SEMPA in '96. Bjarnesen is here today, and the very good paper from Mavision with a lot of patients, which gave us a lot of information, but short-term results, but a lot of information with stenting, contra non-stenting, and I will go directly to the work of El Sharawi from Egypt. And it was the first randomized trial, actually, with a few patients. I did with a short observation time, but it was in favor of cataract thrombolysis, shown for the first time many years ago. And then we have work from Kölbel, is also at the meeting here, and my own work, which I will go in more details in, and last but not least, the work from Oslo, the new work randomized trial, which I will go in more details into and compare the differences between the Copenhagen experience and the Oslo experience. Our experience started in 1999, yes, many years ago actually. We have treated exactly 200 limbs. Today we have 2 patients back in my department running thrombolysis, and our inclusion criteria was that it should be the first episode of deep venous thrombosis, and we should puncture the popliteal vein, ultrasound guided with micropuncture technique, and the deep venous thrombosis should be an acute one, meaning up to 14 days. That is the definition as we use it and should be used. And the age was in the beginning below 60, but we have lifted the age up to 70 years. And now one of the patients actually is 74. So active cancer is, in my mind, in our clinic, a exclusion criteria, and surgery or delivery within 7 days are a contraindication. But we keep the patients on low molecular weight heparin until the 7 days has gone, and then we start the thrombolysis therapy. And there are other contraindications for thrombolysis, such as hypertension and so on. So you have to look very careful at the patients before you are starting your procedure. And we are using a lot of ultrasound sonography and CT scans when we are in doubt. And just to show you how easy it is, we have seen it many demonstrations, how easy it is to see the DVT at the ultrasound, but also easy to see the thrombus at the CT. I don't have to point, you can see it yourself. But the material from Copenhagen comprises 200 limbs, and now we have the median age of 33, rather young people, mostly women, mostly left-sided, which is obvious due to the compression syndrome, and half of the patients had thrombophilia, and many of the women are on birth control pills, not surprisingly, and a lot of women just came after delivery, and a small number after some kind of surgery. We have inserted in 6% a temporary cava filter in case of a floating thrombus. Sorry. Back. Here. When we have a floating thrombus, we have inserted a filter, but I know that Peter will say that's not necessary, and I think you are right, because we have some cases in the past not used it actually, and nothing happened. And we have, as you can see, stented a lot of patients, and that is one of the messages you have to take with you. You have to stent when you need to stent. No ballooning, you have to stent. And the median treatment time was 2.5 days. Just some examples, we can skip it. We are using the wire technique, looping wire technique. You can just see here, up here, and here you can see the contrast going out of the multi-site catheter, multi-hole site catheter with tip occlusion, and here we still have some problem after thrombolysis. You have to do stenting here, and very important in our clinic, we are using intermittent pneumatic compression devices on both legs. We mean it is very, very necessary to increase the flow when you are treating these patients. Treating them, continuing to have flow to keep the lysed segments open when you are treating the patients. I think one of the secrets with our success, but it can be discussed. It is shown in a Japanese work that this pump facilitates thrombolysis actually. Another example, you can see we have lysed this segment now, but there's a tight stenosis, and we are pre-dilating with a balloon, and of course we need to insert a stent, and this can be seen very easily on an ultrasonography. We got through very careful our patients concerning major bleeding and minor bleeding episodes, and 1.5 have major bleeding needing some surgery, and one with a hematoma in the lumbar region not needing surgery, and minor bleeding is seen in 25% of the cases, mostly from the puncture site in the fossa, which can be compressed easily with extra compress, no problems at all. One patient had a clinic sign of pulmonary embolism, but we could not show it on a scintigram. No mortality. And these patients are followed very, very carefully every 3 months and yearly, and is investigated lying and standing with concerning patency and valve sufficiency. The results here listed, and we can give you results from 150 limbs at risk, and you can see after 4 or 5 years the patency rate meaning, and you have results demonstrating competent veins at 84.5%, meaning patent vein segments without any reflux. So we are talking competent veins and not only patent veins. Many papers are just giving the patency rate without talking about reflux, but I think we have to give both results. And if you take a small group, the first, I think it was 87 patients, the first of our experience, and you have actually followed them. No, 91 limbs at risk, we have followed 7 years in median time. 7 years. That's the longest observation material you have, and you can see the figures are just the same, 86, 85% after 5 or 6 years. So these results are very promising in my mind, and it corresponds very well to the occurrence of PTS, which is seen in 16% of the cases, and half of them are mild. And Not surprisingly, patients with competent veins had significantly higher quality of life than patients with insufficiency. That's obvious, in my mind at least. A very important paper from the Pittsburgh group 1 year ago. They had 44 patients with ileofemoral deep venous thrombosis, and a lot of them had involvement of the crural veins, and they punctured in the popliteal vein, and you can see the results that 90% of the patients had patent popliteal vein after mean follow-up of 8 months. And that's new information for me, that you can puncture in the popliteal vein even if you have, but it has to be discussed because we may take it in the discussion because I don't really believe it. Just a few words about the Oslo trial. We have now results of 2 groups, one group with anticoagulation alone and one group with capillary thrombolysis and anticoagulation. And you can see after 2 years we have a difference, but not very big difference between the 2 groups in respect to occurrence of PTS, but significantly difference. And the last picture. What is the difference between the Copenhagen experience and the Oslo experience? Our patients are younger and we have a shorter duration of symptoms. Many of the Oslo patients have 3 or 4 weeks of symptoms, and many of these patients in Oslo have distal involvement and previous deep venous thrombosis. We are using a lot more TPA, and we are using a higher level of PTT, and we are using pulse spray, and we are using quite a lot of volume per hour infused, 120 milliliter actually, and we are using D-dimer to follow our patients when to stop, and we are using intermittent compression device, and we are stenting a lot. So we can say we can reduce the occurrence of PTS after ileofemoral deep venous thrombosis with capillary thrombolysis to about 15–20%, which is lower than the conservative figures shown this morning. So please jump out, try to do these easy cases. It's very simple procedure, low cost. I will come back to that in discussion. And it can be done very easily, and you can keep the patients in the ordinary ward. Don't put them in ICU, it's not necessary. That's my talk. Thank you.